Hello everyone and welcome to Riverside Crafts. Today I'm Ray and we're going to be looking at some paint pouring. I'm sure that most of you have seen some kinds of paint pouring around before. It's all over the net, as I'm sure you're aware, and you're probably more used to seeing canvases done with it, so that of different sizes going up to some that are quite big. Well, I like the effect. But where do you put all these canvases when you've been playing? I don't have anywhere. So I thought about making them a bit smaller. And I came up with the idea of using a small mount board to create myself some cards. So I'm using, the paints that I've been using actually are these. They're very cheap and cheerful. We sell them in the shop, and I have a lot of them because I use them for all sorts of things. And what I normally do is the ones that are getting empty, I'm like, well, what do I do with those? Well, they are the perfect ones to use for paint pouring, because once it's got to paint level about there, I can add the pouring medium, give it a good shake, and then I've got ready-made bottles for paint pouring done, and I don't have to go and make lots of mess. So for me, it's perfect. One of the other things I like about paint pouring is there's not really an awful lot of waste. You think there's going to be because it goes everywhere, but you can use all the bits up that you make as you go along. Now, as you can see, I work inside a couple of trays. These are cat litter trays. I've lined them with kitchen roll today, mainly because my trays are filthy, because I've been doing a lot of playing and I haven't really cleaned up after myself. But one of the things I wanted to show you is the medium, once it's dry, it peels off the plastic. So if you peel it off the plastic and then stick a cabochon, an acrylic cabochon, which they sell at the shop in the jewellery bit, over the top of it, you can make these beautiful like buttons. If you're a beader, you can bead round them. If you're a scrapbooker and a card maker, they make fabulous gems. You can get them in different sizes, but that is just literally the paint peeled off the edges of my bit of plastic like this and stuck on with some glue onto the cabochon, and you get these stunning buttons that you can use. So you don't really waste a lot, which is really good going. I'm going to show you a canvas to start with, mainly because I think it's it's where we all start, where we all think about. You probably noticed that I've got some plastic cups that I use to support my stuff when it's draining and I'm messing with it. Mainly because it's cheaper and I had them in the cupboard, not for any other preference or reason, just because I had them. Okay, I'm going to put some gloves on because it does make a mess. And knowing my fingers and how my hands are, I really ought to just sort of cover them up. Otherwise, I'm going to have a lot more mess everywhere. Okay, now we're going to do the canvas first. Okay, and when I've done the canvas, I'm going to show you what I do for the other bits. All right, so I'm going to start my canvas. I've got my pre-mixed paints. They're already done. I mixed them up the other day, and they're fine. They're quite they keep really well like this, so I don't have to worry too much about doing something. So I'm just going to pour some black on, okay, because I'm going to start off my canvas like this. So when you're doing a canvas, you obviously use a lot more paint. When I'm doing the bits for the cards, as you'll see, we really don't use an awful lot of paint at all, which makes life a lot easier. I'm just going to move this paint around a little bit because I want it to cover a lot of the canvas so that I can do some of the stuff that I need to do. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wiggle around so it's covering it, so that it sort of will move when I put the other paint on in a minute. So I'm going to do, the first thing we're going to do is what they call a dirty pour, which will make sort of, it's one of the basic things that you can see. If you get stuck and you're not sure what you're going to do next, YouTube is absolutely full of paint pouring ideas. using all sorts of things that you've probably got in your kitchen, and your home you don't even think about. All right, so I'll leave that like that for now. Right, I'm going to get myself a cup because I'm going to mix up some colours. So let me get myself a cup. They're nothing fancy. These are just the really cheap, bog standard, plain little cups. Okay, I'm just going to put a bit of black in the bottom of my cup as my start. Okay, and I'm going to put some silicone spray, because that's what I use. I just use it's like a WD-40 type spray, and I'm going to just spray it on the top of the black paint that I've done. This helps to create what they call cells, and stops the paints from mixing so much, which is quite a nice thing. And I'm just going to put a bit of a variety of different colours that I've pre-mixed, because I do have a range of them that I've mixed up over time, and I just keep playing with them. So I've got lots of colours to do this with, which makes it quite nice. Some colours you wouldn't even think of using, like neon pink. You think, oh my goodness, but it works really well. So do metallics. They work nicely as well. Right, so I've got a reasonable amount in my cup. Now I'm just going to stir my cup, but I'm not stirring it like you. I'm just cutting it, if that makes sense, just because I want it to do. And then what I'm going to do is tip it upside down on top of what I've already done. Okay, I'm going to lift it slightly, and I'm just going to let it pour out. Okay, so it's sort of, yeah, we can all do that. Tip it upside down and go for it, not a problem. So I'm just going to move it around. Okay, and it's up to us how we move it. Use your fingers to just go across your edges, and move it how you want. And as you can see, because I've put paint on the board on here already, it's moving really nicely, and I'm getting a really nice amount of feeling for what I'm doing. Okay. You can just go around your edges and make sure you've got them all covered. And yay, done. That quick and that easy. And that's what I mean. It is very quick, very easy. The bit that's really hard is leaving it to dry. And that's the difficulty, because you don't want to be touching it. You don't want to be messing around with it. You need to put it somewhere and leave it to dry for a couple of days or so. Okay? Because then you've got it sorted. All right, so we're just going to put this one out the way, because we're going to do some smaller ones. I just want to show you what I would do for a big one. So I would just swap out my tray and put it somewhere to dry. We'll have another look at it in a little bit. Right, now I'm going to show you what I've been working on to do my cards. Okay, I'm working on mount board. It comes in different size sheets, and I've been cutting it into circles, into rectangles. I've also been using the backs of the paper pads, so all sorts of bits of card I've got, and I use them all. If the card is like this and it doesn't have any covering on it, I've been gessoing it, just because it helps the paint move a little bit more. It stops it sort of sinking in too quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple. All right, and I hope you can see everything okay. And I've just said it, hello. The pouring medium I'm using at the moment is the one that's available in the shop, and I can't show it to you because I mix my paints up and then put it in the bin, not thinking. So, but I know they have it still there, so just pop along and see. There are loads of pouring mediums out there, and they are all pretty much the same, to be honest. I've tried Pebios, I've tried Efcos and Goldens and all sorts. So I've used lots of different ones when it comes to pouring mediums. And you don't have to be quite so, sort of, what's the right word? Can't think what the word is I want, but it will come back to me. Precious about it. They can be mixed around a bit. Okay, right, so I'm just going to put some white paint on this one. Okay, this is a little bit thick, but that's because this one I'm using it as a base at the moment, and I don't really want it coming off too much because I'm using this as my base to put to move something else into in a minute. So this is a little bit thicker than I would do normally, but it's just a way of playing with the thing. Now, you saw the size of the cup that I used when I did the canvas. I'm using a shot cup this time. I don't need anything bigger. This works perfectly. I'm just going to stick it in the middle of what I'm doing, and I'm going to start putting myself some colours in. And basically I'm just going to, this one just takes time to develop, and you're just going to keep putting a little bit in and playing with it as you go, and as it pushes itself out, as you put the weight of stuff on, and then it moves it, and you just sort of watch it sort of peel away from where you're going. So I'm just going to take my time with this one, and it just has, I just leave it to sit. I found that's my best option, is I don't do a lot with it. I just leave it there for a bit, and I can move it slightly if I feel I need to, just to pull out some more colour, but it tends to do quite well just being left. Okay, so I'm leaving that one for a bit, and we'll just ignore it and let it just do its own thing. Okay, well, we're just going to do a quick pour on this piece here, and we're going to do something really simple, nothing too extravagant. Bit of black paint, and when you mixed it, it wants to be sort of double cream consistency. So when you think about your double cream that when you pick it up at the supermarket, that's the consistency that you're looking for from your paint. Okay, so that's what you're aiming at in the end. So it's quite nice sort of to think about where you're aiming. Let's go with a lighter colour. Turquoise would probably be good. Okay. I'm just going to put some spray on top of it. And then I'm going to use a stick. These are coffee stirrer sticks. And I reuse them quite a lot. So they just get used again and again and again, as do my cups, I'm afraid. I'm not. Okay, and then just literally I'm going to drag this along and around. And look at the colours that are coming out of that. Beautiful. Okay, and we're just going to move it along. You don't have to worry too much about it all. It will sort of fill in its gaps quite nicely. You just sort of drag it along your fingers, if you can see. Okay, and it will just do, it works really well doing it like this. And you just drag it along, and then that gives you your edges covered without too much interference in what you're doing, and it sort of takes its time to just get there then. Plus, this is where you sort of form a dam, so it knows where it's going, and you're not sort of like taking it off too far. And they make oh, I'm dripping it on the other one, but it won't matter, you'll just add to it. And that's, I tend not to be too precious, as you can probably tell. I just sort of let it do its thing. And then that is a fabulous background for a card. I don't have to do anything else to that now. I'm going to leave that to dry, because it's just a nice way of doing something a little bit different. Okay, I'm just going to put some more colour onto this one, because it just needs a little bit of something a bit more that's going to show through that green. That green is really holding on, isn't it? So let's put a bit more of a colour in. Come on, out you come. Are we going to come out, or are we just going to sit there today? When it comes to paint pouring, it never does what you want it to. So just be aware of that one. Whatever it is you want it to do is not what it's going to. All right, so if it doesn't do what you want, drop some bits in and then start moving it around and play with it. And let it just do something totally different to what you were hoping it was going to do. When you've done you're pouring and bits, and it's drying, and it's dried. Sometimes, depending on what you want, you can actually buy, you can get acrylic varnish. We have it in the shop in the same mixes as the what's the word, as the paints. Okay, so I'm just going to move this with my heat gun, because I don't have a hairdryer in my craft, so I'm just going to move this across with my heat gun and give it a bit of a different feel for a minute. Okay. Okay, so that's now looking very different to how it did initially. I'm just gonna, I want to put some more paint on that bit there. Is it going to come out? Yeah, here we go. So that's quite psychedelic, that one, isn't it? Which is quite nice. Gives it a very different feel again to what you expect. I obviously didn't put my holes in big enough when I used my thing this morning, my soldering iron, to put holes in things. They obviously weren't big enough. Need bigger holes. So we'll do it with bigger holes and see what happens. Got bigger holes in a bigger cup. So we'll see what happens this time. So we'll put some black in the bottom, because I've got black and it's on a black background anyway. We're going to go with some fluorescent yellow, because I've got some, and that's a different colour to what you'd anticipate putting in with it all. A bit of blue. It's quite like blue. Got a greeny colour I mixed up yesterday, so we'll try a bit of that. Well, that's a bit thick. We'll see what happens. Some purple. What shall we do next? Should we go for a metallic? Let's do another metallic-y colour. Here we go. Okay, I can see the colour starting to come out on this one now. We'll see. We'll leave that and just to keep watching. I don't know if you can see the colours are starting to come out at the sides, sort of petaling is what they call it. So a bit more of a brighter colour in, so we get a bit more colour coming through. Oh, there we go. Now you can see the colours coming out, can't you? Yep, need bigger holes. And you're going to get this sort of flower effect, which is quite pretty and a little different. Depending on where the paint went in will depend on how your flowers are going to look when you're finished. And how quick you are at lifting things off. Because obviously that's still going to be having paint coming out of it when you lift it off. And there's going to be a gap in the middle where there isn't going to be so much paint, because you've obviously sort of let it do. So I'm just going to pour that in the middle and take it off like so. And now you can see my flower coming. That gives me another type of finish, you see. Okay, so that's another way of using up what you've done to give you a different sort of look. I'm just going to put this one over here to carry on, and then I'll do you slightly different one. Put that there because that's draining off on that, and we can always add more colours into it. This is what one of my favourite ones to do. I'm just going to cover my board again. One of the good things about using the board is obviously you're not adding a lot of weight to what you're doing when it comes to cards. You can cut it whatever size you like, so you can do it to the cut whatever you fancy. It needs to be at least the 3mm thick card. Don't try and do it with the really thin stuff. It will just buckle and bend on you. And like I said, if it's a grey board that you're using, please make sure that you use words please would go good, wouldn't they? You gesso it first, because otherwise it just sinks into the cardstock and it doesn't really do an awful lot for you. Right, so I've got some bits of yarn. You can use any string, anything you like. Just put it on however you fancy, wiggle it in so it goes sort of in a bit and out a bit, and just sort of wiggle it and leave it to one end. And then we put 3 bits on, because it seems 3s are a good number for what you're doing, and it sort of helps it a little bit. So put 3 on like so. We'll go up there again into that edge. Whoops, come on. Okay, now you take your colours this time, and this time you're going to basically follow your yarn that you've just put on there. So you're sort of following where you've put your paint roughly. Okay, and you can do it with a couple of colours or 3 colours or however you fancy. Don't get too sort of upset about it being too pristine. You can put blobs on. You can do it so that you've got it's very tidy. It doesn't have to be. I'm not tidy, as you can probably tell. I'm a very untidy and a messy crafter. Right, so I'm going to pull one at a time, and as I pull it, as you can see, it's going to move the paint for me. Okay, so I'm just going to pull it along. All right, and that sort of does a wiggly swipe for me. Now, if I've got a large area of a colour that I want to change, I will drop my yarn back into it, and I will drag that up so that it will just bring it to another place, and it will give it another sort of another swipe coming off. So you get a different feel, a different type of finish on when you do it that way, when you're swiping, to what you would do by just tipping it over. You can see here that there's some cells forming because I've done the swipe. That's because some of my pre-mixed paints, I've already put the silicone spray in, so that I don't, if I forget, it doesn't matter, they're there. But that sort of gives you a very stylized finish. Put that one over there to dry. Oh, we've had so much, I'm making such a mess already. Oh well, never mind, eh? Doesn't matter. Let's have another bit of board. Use the last of the black up. I'm going to do half black on one bit if I've got enough, or it might be a third. Okay, we'll do a different colour down the other bit then. Let's do a creamy colour. We've got a lot of that one. I know I have, because I don't use it very often. Okay. So I'm just going to use these colours just to go across here a bit, and sort of like, so they're coming off the edges, because this is my base. And yeah, I know I've got a drip of another colour on it. Like I said, I'm a very messy person in general when it comes to crafting. I don't worry about where I've got my colours middled up or not. So, okay. Now you can put yourself a stripe through the middle of it. So you can go with a couple of stripes of different colours that you like. Okay. Take your heat gun or a hairdryer, depending on what you've got, and use it to push your paint where you fancy it to go. And it will give you a very different feeling to what you would get by swiping it and by pouring it in the same way. So you get a different sort of visual of it, and you get these really sort of quite big open spaces turn up. That gives you, again, it's a different technique, different finish, and it's something else to look at when you're playing with paint pouring. So you can, and the thing is, if you think, oh, I've gone wrong, do you know what you can do? Swizzle it up, put it to one side and ignore it and see what happens, because you'll be really surprised at what happens to some of these things when you leave them. I tend to try and scrape some of the excess off the sides if I can, because then at least I know that I've got my paint where it needs to be, because I don't always get it in every corner properly, and it just helps it. Let's have a look what's been happening in here. Look, we've got some different colours coming through. I'm going to put some more paint on that one for a moment. We'll go with some blue, put a wiggle of blue on it, and we'll do what they call a swipe. I'm not very good at it because I've not been doing this for very long, but it's something kind of finding that I am really enjoying, and it's fantastic for those cards for teenagers. You know, when you just don't, those kids that you're like, what the heck do I do for them? I've got no idea. I don't know what to do, and I'm stuck. I had a whole bunch of kids like that, which were a nightmare to try and find things for and do things for. Let's see if we can move it a bit. And because I've already got some colour on it, it's going to move differently and give me a different feel to it. Okay, so I'm just going to get it to move a little bit so it's covering it. Okay, so it's covering most of it, and then apparently, she says, having not done this, so being very brave and on camera, is you put your tissue on it and you just drag it across, and what you get is lots and lots of cells. So I'm just going to go this way and do this side. I'll come back to the bottom here. Can you see how that's going? All these little tiny, looks like froth off of the sea coming in it, which is pretty spectacular, I have to say. So we're using all my waste bits up and adding a few more. I don't know if you can see. Can you see the tiny little dots that are all appearing in it? So it's giving you another different background. So giving you a totally different feel for what you do. So paint pouring doesn't have to be on a canvas. It doesn't have to be big. It can be as small as you like. You use up your oddments of paint. I'm sure Caroline's put up there the links to the pouring medium that I can't remember the name of because I wasn't concentrating this morning because I had my granddaughter here, and I'm sorry, but she's not very well, so I was thinking about that. Thank you for joining me today. I can see a couple of people who said hi Alison and hi Charlotte. I hope that you are having fun. Now the spray, just so that you know, it's a silicone spray, so WD-40, anything like that. It's just a silicone spray. You can actually buy silicone drops, but we had that in the garage, so yeah, I just went out and nicked it off hubby, so he didn't know, and it seems to be working, so I'm quite happy. I hope that gives you some ideas, because when you look at the size of the cup that I'm using to do these sizes of bits with, you really are not using a lot of paint. So you can really use up those little odds and ends quite happily and get some spectacular results that are very different to what you're going to expect. If you get a bit and it doesn't cover how you like, remember this is grey board or mount board. You can just cut it up again and cut it off. To cut grey board or mount board, I would recommend you use either a mount board cutter or a rotary cutter. It's a lot safer, it's a lot easier, and you're less likely to end up cutting yourself. So but you can buy it pre-cut for you if you want to. I know we sell it in sheets in the shop. I think they start at A4 and 12 by 12 and then right the way up to great big sizes. So have a word with Caroline or whoever's in the shop and they will find it for you. So thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you next week. And what I shall do is, in the week as these dry, I shall put up the cards I've made with them so that you can see what they look like when they're all finished. Obviously they've got to wait, we've got to have some drying time now, so I'll just leave them like that and let them settle. Thank you. Bye bye.